and still can't get it up? Well, then crank up the volume all the way and sit back. Tune your cockpit comms to 123.45. Let's Sky Blue Radio. Get you off the ground.
I've held it all in. God knows I've tried. But it's an awful awakening in a country boy's life. To look in the mirror in total surprise at the hair on my shoulder, the age in my eye. Amanda, light of my life, fate should have made you a gentleman's wife. Amanda, light of my life, fate should have made you a gentleman's wife. It's a measure of people who don't understand the pleasures of life in a hillbilly band. I got my first guitar when I was 4.
All right, hello again. Welcome to this second leg of this around the world tour. The plan is to mimic the make a kind of mimic of the around the world tour that Concorde did back in 1999. It was this, I guess, the second world tour. They did one earlier as well. This one we started off, well, I did a positioning flight from Kennedy, from Heathrow to Kennedy, and earlier today I did the first leg of the tour, which is from Kennedy to Vancouver. We're sitting now in Vancouver at the gate. We had a bit of dinner or breakfast or brunch, lunch, sort of. It's quite early here still in Vancouver. So the plan is now to fly to Kona in Hawaii. The estimated flight time today, it will be supersonic all the way. We might need to stop at flight level 280 for a couple of miles till we get away from the coast of the west coast of US or Canada in this case. And from there we'll accelerate and we'll keep supersonic all the way to our deceleration and descent. It will be a continuous descent with no subsonic step into Kona. So we're not going to Honolulu, but we're going to Kona. So I got a couple of more things to sort out. I need to start my VA clients, and I need to start the FS real time as well. A couple of more minutes and then we'll be on our way to doing the flight preparations here. We have 88 passengers waiting eagerly for their next leg. I guess they've paid quite a few pounds to be on this round the world tour. I'm sure they're quite wealthy. I guess I could tell you about the next few legs that we'll be doing the next coming weeks. So we're currently at Vancouver. We'll be flying to Kona and then down to Fiji. From Fiji we'll continue to Sydney, Australia, down under, to Guam, or however you pronounce that, the Air Force Base. And then from there we'll continue again supersonic to Bangkok, and then from Bangkok to Chennai in I guess it's India. To be honest, I'm not sure. I think it sounds familiar. From there, we'll continue to Kenya, Nairobi. Then from Nairobi up to, I think it's Egypt, Aqaba. And from there, we'll continue up to Venice in Italy. And from there, the couple of last legs for Venice, Lisbon. From there, from Lisbon, we'll do the last leg back to Kennedy. So in total, it's 12 legs. We're on the second leg now. So in a couple of weeks' time, it should be all done, hopefully. I've done this tour maybe twice or 3 times before. It's good fun, something different, so I thought we would try that. I guess we could jump into the, well, I said I was going to start FS real time. All I do is talk, so I better get going. As I said, 2 hour 55, maybe 3 hour flight time. Block time obviously a bit more, 3 hour 20 minutes, maybe 3 hour 15 minutes. I'm trying the new, I bought yesterday evening, I bought Active Sky 2016 and the Cloud Art, so I'm trying that out as well. It looks pretty damn good. It looks much better than, well, than before. So that's fun. So here we're sitting. I won't be bothering doing any gate like catering and stuff like that. We've got plenty of things to do anyway, so we won't bother doing any catering and passenger loading with the GSX. We just use the pushback feature. So without further ado, let's go into the cockpit. There we go. So first things first, we obviously need some power. I guess on a normal turnaround it wouldn't have been disconnecting ground power, but this obviously I need to restart the simulator and reload everything and stuff like that, so the ground power is off. So connect ground power. Got the usual ding dong. Quick look on the fuel panel here to see that the equipment bay cooling is properly set up, which it is, so that's good. And we don't get any overheat condition on the avionics. Next thing, we want to do an alignment of the INS. Now you can align it the proper way. I do it the quick way or the fast way. That's by pressing Ctrl plus I. That will do a quick alignment of the INS. Going to the air data computers, will turn that on. And going back to the fuel panel, we'll set up the first few items that we need to do. And that's the zero fuel weight, center of gravity, and the amount of fuel that we have. So starting off here, we'll set the zero fuel weight. Of this flight, it's 88,692 kilograms. So 88,692 kilograms, so 88.7 basically. Zero fuel weight, center of gravity 52.23. If you wonder where I get all these figures, I'm using a program called CPS, Concorde Performance System, made by a chap called Pierre. If you're flying Concorde and you want to fly more than the like the default flights and the default loads that comes with FS Labs Concorde, I could highly recommend you to get hold of this freeware program, or I guess you could say donationware. So I would recommend you to donate a couple of bucks to Pierre, because he's done a sterling job with this program. So if you have the ability, please consider to donate to him. He deserves every penny. Now what I'm doing, I'm inserting the fuel amount. Since this is a supersonic flight all through, we would need around 74 tons of fuel. It would be a bit more if we needed to do a subsonic step as well. Concorde is a bit more fuel efficient at Mach 2 and not Mach 0.905, believe it or not. We'll then set the load limit for tank 11. So looking on my operational flight plan, we should we should have around 5 tons of fuel in tank 11 before departure. That should give us a central gravity of 53.5%, which is the planned takeoff central gravity. So that's the fuel panel for now. We'll get back to this one obviously throughout the flight. Quite a central part of flying Concorde is to take care of the fuel panel. If we continue then, I'll bring up my checklist. Starting at the overhead panel, turn on the flight control inverters and install system. We don't need the nav lights yet, it's still light outside. We'll set throttle master to one of the selections. Today I will be using main because I started off with alternate back in Kennedy. So then when we are descending into Hawaii later on at Mach 1, descending and slowing down, we'll switch to alternate to the other selection. But that's another story. Going to the engineer panel again, going to this panel, we want to have the secondary add-ons to auto and fuel heaters on auto. The recirculation valves will remain shut for now. We should also have a look on the ground hydraulics here. These guys should be off and this should be set to yellow. Very good. And it's time to turn on the DC power, the batteries. And we will load our INS with the waypoints, first set of waypoints. The INS is a nice piece of kit. The only problem is that it can only hold 9 waypoints at the same time, so it's very important that you need to remember to load waypoints throughout the flights. With CPS you can create data cards that will help you quite a lot. Make it a bit more convenient. Next thing, going to the 2D panel, we want to set some takeoff figures. Again, the takeoff figures that I'm inputting here or setting here at the 2D panel are all received or made up by CPS. V1 today will be 148, rotation speed of 170, V2 of 196, target number 4 is set to 250. We have a pitch index or a theta angle of 14.4 degrees, which I've set there. That's the pitch that we want to keep on the initial departure. Once we're climbing out, that will give us a nice climb out and acceleration. And then once we get to 250 knots, I need to pitch up in order to maintain 250 knots. That's our climb out speed. Fuel flow bugs should be set to 20.7. engine number 4 is always a bit lower. That's 20.3 this time. Going to the engineer panel, I can go to the 3D panel here, virtual cockpit, and show you where the panel is. Located here. Here we set the P7 bugs, the pressure in the jet pipe, which is 39.8 psi. 39.8. Engine number 4, always a couple of notches lower, 39.2. That's that. Now, what I will do, I will open up the Concorde performance manual and see if Vancouver is included. If it's included, we could have proper noise abatement procedure, the correct time that we want to have our reheats on, and also the correct angle which we should set the throttles after reaching that specific time on the reheats, sort of. Just need to find that bloody manual. There we go, performance manual. Now I guess I could show you this as I did before. If you go, if I press there we go. So I bought this one off eBay. Very nice piece of kit. So I think we should have Vancouver here. I think I've seen it before. Oh, really nice stout, very smooth. Then I got a bottle of wines and one beer more, so I should be able to enjoy this flight. Toronto, Washington. I think we should have Vancouver. Maybe, maybe not. Antigua, Baltimore, blah blah blah. Winslow. Oh, that was Montreal. No, we didn't have. Sorry, we didn't have that airport. Well, then we'll stick with the figures that came with the CPS. So, according to CPS, we should have our reheats on for 69 seconds. Bingo. And we should reduce our power setting to a TLA or throttle lever angle to 17.5. Now let's have a look at the departure. We're going to fly the Vancouver 9 departure, and that's basically heading 083, and then we'll get radar vectors to our first fix. Initial climb is, according to the chart, 7,000. Well, we obviously don't have an ATC, so just climb to like 1,000 feet or so, and then make a right turn, basically direct to our first waypoint. I will set Vancouver in nav radio 1 because we wanted to do our DME update from Vancouver VR, and then it's basically 2 hours on the Pacific Ocean, so we don't have any DMEs to update our INSs, so it's quite crucial to get one update before we leave landfall later on. Now, well, I guess that's the nav radio set basically. There's nothing else to do really. What we can do obviously is to set transponder to 2000 and above. I could also go to Unicoms since we don't have any ATC online. There we go. Well, as a matter of fact, I haven't even logged on to VATSIM. Let's do that first. There we go. Alright. So I think we're pretty much ready to do our pushback. I believe so anyway. And we should depart from 08 right. So I think we should do a pushback with nose to the right. There we go. Couple of things to do before we let air go to the air starter. Engine debow switch should be debow. Turn on anti-collision. Set the idle switches to high. That means that the engine will run on a higher idle speed than normal, or higher than low anyway. Turn on the main engine feed pumps, and we'll turn on or set the AC generators to on. And I will also start the Phoenix client, otherwise I won't be able to log this flight. Now, let's start. So what we want to have is 11% on the N2 here. We open up the high pressure valve. You can see the ignition illuminates in green. EGT is rising and fuel flow is increasing. Now the EGT is a bit misleading because my panel state is loaded just when the engines, or the panel state that I made is loaded or saved when I've just turned off the engines, hence the high EGT there. I mean, this has been sitting for a couple of hours now on the apron at the gate at Vancouver, so the EGT should be a bit closer to ambient temperature, not 140 centigrade. We're now starting engine number 2. Start switch goes to start. Rotation N2, passing 11-12% to turn on the, or open up the high pressure valve. EGT rising, we've got fuel flow. 25%, start switch goes back to off, and at this point we could set the debow switch back to normal, and that gives us a acceleration up to our idle speed. The debow is used when you well, as it says, debow the engine. The shaft will get slightly bent during engine cooldown, and to minimize vibration and possible fan scraping on the engine. I can't find the words in English. The engine casing, so to say. You want to let the debow procedure go on, so you leave the debow switch on debow, and it will settle at 30% for roughly 1 minute, and then after 1 minute it will continue to accelerate, and that's to straighten out the engine shaft basically. So I do a lot of talking. I turn on the hydraulics. We can now release the parking brake.
All engines clear. Start that wheel.
Since we don't have an APU, I need to do a bleed air start. So open up the engine bleed valves and open up the cross bleeds. The condition valves to the rest of the aircraft system is left at shut. Starting engine number 4. Again, bleeding air from the engine into the air start when it's full, which gives us rotation, and again at 11% we'll open up the high pressure valve. Ignition, EGT rising and fuel flow increasing. Quite undramatic start, nothing to worry about really. What you need to worry about is obviously you can't be sitting too long on the ground with 4 engines running at idle. That will burn quite a lot of fuel. So you want to get going in reasonable, quick manner to prevent significant fuel burn before you even have departed, basically. Oh, I forgot to open up the high pressure valve. Sorry. There we go. So the plan is to depart from 08 right. So we've got a, you know, quite short taxi time. You can hear the engine roaring.
Set parking brake.
After start, we turn on the engine feed pumps. Check the doors by pressing this button. Energize the flight controls, which is, by the way, fly-by-wire. Analog fly-by-wire, but still fly-by-wire. So set the elevons and rudder to the blue channel, which you can see here. And I've also turned on the different systems concerning the flight control: select, trim, auto stabilization, artificial fuel, etc. Going to the DC panel here, we'll set the emergency generator to ground bypass.
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass main removed.
And then we go to the air bleed control, which is, by the way, located up here. Now it's time to set the condition valves to on, and we will shut the crossbleed. Don't need to crossbleed anything in between. Turn on the brake fans. This aircraft is equipped with brake fans if needed to cool the engines. Now I will have a look on the checklist here to see that I haven't missed
Left is
anything.
clear. Right is clear.
Now the idle switch should also be set to low from high. So if you have a look here on the ANT2, press low, you can see the idle speed of these engines going down, and the fuel flow is decreasing by 600 or 700 kilograms per engine, which is quite significant. Apart from that, that's the after start checklist complete. Now I think I'll do the taxi checks before I start to move. I tried to do the taxi checks while taxiing Kennedy last flight, and was a bit dodgy taxiing. So I'll sit here with the parking brakes on while I'm doing the checks, the taxi checks. Currently setting the passenger information display, so I'm setting the distance to go, 2,410 nautical miles, and then right click here, that gives us the miles, so 2,770 miles, I believe. Now it's time to set the fuel panel for departure. We want to have engine or fuel in the engine feed tanks at all times, 1, 2, 3 and 4. These are tank number 1 is feeding engine number 1, tank 2 is feeding engine number 2, etc. So we need to turn on the pumps for 5 and 7. That means that fuel from 5 is, this pump is feeding this tank. This pump, the right hand pump in 5, is feeding tank number 2, and the same goes for tank 7. The left hand pump in tank 7 is feeding engine number 3. Sorry, tank number 3, and the right hand pump in tank 7 is feeding tank number 4, and that's set. What we then need to say, we need to arm the fuel lob protection, and we need to turn on the DR for the respective tanks. We have dedicated DR pumps in tanks 9, 10 and 11. What we do with the remainder of the tanks, for tank 6 we turn on the right hand pump, and tank 8 the right hand pump as well, that acts as DR, and then the hydraulic fuel pumps in the wing tips act as DR as well. So that's that set. Then we need to have 53.5% in the center of gravity, so I will start to move fuel aft from tank 9, and the inlet's open for tank 11, and fuel is going into tank 11. while that thing is pumping fuel, I'll go to the engine control schedule again, set flyover and 88%, go into the overhead here, turn on some lights so when we're taxiing, I'll set all these switches, static heaters, probe heaters, drain mass heaters all on, auto ignition on, auto throttle on as well. The rest is left as it is now. And this looks good as well. I guess we could have, oops, these straps on. Then obviously we need to pressurize the cabin. So I will set the desired cabin altitude. I usually go with 6,000 feet. It works all the time for me anyway. Seems to give us a nice cabin differential pressure. Yeah, that's that for now. I think we could start taxiing a bit, but I don't have the slightest clue where we're going. We have now moved, started off in 52.2, it's now 52.8, so it's looking good, it's looking good. I guess I could have bought the FS Dream Team Airport, but yeah, I'm not here very often, so let's do the default airport. That was the thought anyway. So now we're waiting for the central gravity to reach 53.5%. I'm not sure how many viewers there is now. Hopefully there are a couple of you anyway. If you have any questions, ask some question. I would try to answer them. I'm not a Concorde expert, I'm just an enthusiast of this aircraft. I will try to answer somewhat correctly. I'm sure there's someone else that's much more competent than I am on this aircraft, but I guess I could point you in the right direction in somewhat manner. 53.5, stop the transfer there, and the fuel panel is apart from setting the load limiter to 10,500 kilogram, we're all set for departure now concerning the fuel panel. So now we don't have to touch the fuel panel. We will leave it until we're getting to Mach 7. Once we reach Mach 7, it's time to move fuel forward, because as we accelerate, the center of lift will actually move aft. So in order to counteract that, instead of moving the elevons out in the airflow, which will cause unnecessary drag and give us a fuel penalty, we will move the fuel aft to move the center of gravity, and that will give us a nice and balanced aircraft. We're starting off with taking off with 53.5%, and once we reach Mach 2, or once the fuel transfer is complete, we should have a center of gravity of 59%. So that's quite a few feet that the center of gravity has moved aft. Quite impressive. I don't have the slightest clue where we are taxiing, but I think I should continue and make a left turn here on Victor, and then cross runway 1331, and then continue to 08 right, because that's the longer one of the runways. Where the hell is the taxiway then? Oh, right. The default airport didn't correspond to the charts. Where the hell should I? Oh, okay. All right. Bit of a detour here. make a left turn here on Kilo then. And I'm not just going through the taxi checklist. To see that I haven't missed anything. Looks pretty good right now, anyway. Yep, taxi checklist is complete. Alright, then we make a right turn here. I should have taken Juliet earlier on. Well. And with Concorde, when you're taxing it, you have to remember that the nose gear is actually quite far aft of the actual cockpit. Can't remember the figures now, but if you've seen Concorde, you know that that's true. It's the landing, the nose landing gear is quite far off, so you need to overshoot quite a lot seen from the cockpit while you're doing the turns. Having a look on the fuel consumed indicators, you can see that if you take the numbers times 10, you have the fuel burned per engine in kilograms. So we burned 250 kilograms in engine 1 and 4 and 350 kilograms roughly on the inboard engine. That's obviously because we started those engines before we started off. All right, you know what, I'll do like this. I'm a bad boy. Yeah, so we have already burned around 900 kilograms of fuel, and we just started to move basically from the apron. We haven't reached the runway yet, so you want to keep the taxi time quite short to prevent burning too much fuel. I will arm the takeoff monitor now, and we need the reheats for takeoff, so shift F4 will turn on the reheats. I will let the cabin know that we are shortly will take off. That's that. We can turn on some lights, and I will turn off the brake fans. Press recall. I've got this chap again. The CG warning. It's nothing to do with the CG, but it's something to do with the indication system here. That's going bonkers. So you need just to. It has something to do with my panel state, I believe. It always does like this. Okay, let's see if we manage to. Yeah, now it's gone. Oh, I forgot to turn on my transponder since we are in the US. So I think we'll take the intersection here. These couple of meters won't matter too much, and we're actually quite light. So take this intersection, Lima 4 apparently. And the Vancouver 9 departure. I have no idea if there's someone in the vicinity. I don't care, to be honest. Well, not much anyway. Seattle approach is still online, but that doesn't help us. So we continue straight ahead, then make a right turn to our first waypoint, which in this case is actually Vancouver UR, but I think we might fly direct to the first, or well, the second waypoint. Makes a bit more sense. Alright, so parking brakes. I'll just announce my intention. There we go. 083 on the heading, 7,000 feet. Ready to go, I believe. Right, let's go. 3, 2, 1, now.
Airspeed building.
Reeds are on, should be on anyway. There we go. Magnificent.
Power safe.
I'm afraid I don't have time to look outside, but it is magnificent.
V1.
V1.
Rotate.
Rotate. Now we pitch up to 14.5 degrees, which I've set in the pitch index.
Positive climb.
Gear up. Then we'll catch 250 knots.
Knots.
So we can make a right turn now.
3, 2, 1. Noise.
Noise reads off, and we'll reduce the throttle by pressing Ctrl F5 to our set angle. Then we need obviously to pitch down. We'll go into INS navigation now, so we see toward which way we should be flying for our first waypoint, which is Vancouver UR. You can see the vertical speed is quite low in the beginning, but I will increase my throttle shortly. At this stage we need to do a couple of things. And I will press waypoint change to the first waypoint, or second waypoint rather. Should make a right turn. Let's go full dry power. So that's the full power without the reeds. And we try to keep 250 knots. Continue
1,000 to go.
past 7,000 feet, and let's try to actually I will pitch up a bit more, so I don't, we're in the US, so we need to keep 250 knots here. Once we get to 250 knots, I press IS hold. There we go. I'll set this to our initial level 280. might need to stop at 280 for a little while. It shouldn't be too long. I will turn up the nose and visor. You see nose and visors coming up. Lovely clouds actually. Guess we could turn on a bit of engine anti-ice. I'm not sure if it's needed, but some moisture, yeah. Okay, we're passing 10,000 feet. We can go into pitch hold now and increase our speed. The most economic speed for Concorde is always the VMO. So that's the maximum speed at any given altitude. In this case, around 400 knots indicated. And since we're climbing straight away to a flight level 280, I will set the altimeter to standard setting. There we go. And as I said before, we want to update our INS as quickly as possible. So I'm inserting the coordinates for Vancouver and Vancouver VR, and that will give us a RNAV light that should illuminate. There we go. That means that we are updating our INSs, DME updating INSs with the help of Vancouver DME. Good. Speed has increased quite a bit. Mach 0.7 now. As I said before, this is the time when we'll start move fuel aft, amongst other things. Oh, we need to turn on these bad boys, because we didn't have too much fuel in tanks 5 and 7. It's a bit bumpy yet, so I'll leave the seatbelt signs a bit longer. Oh, look at those clouds. It actually looks really good, I must say. They've done a brilliant job with the clouds, really. Beautiful. Oh, look at that view. That actually looked pretty good. I'm quite impressed with that. Brilliant. And the hit on the frames isn't too bad either. I mean, look at that. Oh. Ooh, I think this calls for a screenshot. We are well on our way. In max climb, VATSIM 5, flight level 200. And I think we could release the passengers now. What's the temperature? -18. We don't need this one anymore. impressive clouds. Okay, let's see when we can accelerate. Should accelerate at waypoint 3. Or 20 miles after waypoint 3. So in 60 miles then. So it will actually be a short stop on the way. Flight level 280. But as we pass this landfall, we will accelerate. Go into Mach hold now, because we got to Mach 905.
Altitude known, 1000 to go.
And it's quite important to remember to set this to altitude acquire, otherwise the autopilot will overshoot the altitude selected. See, it goes into altitude acquired right now. I need to tweak this a bit. So I set this to IS acquired. Reduce the speed a bit. Then go into Mach hold on the auto throttle. That gives us a nice Mach number of 905. I will leave these pumps on because they will shortly begin to be filled by tank 9 and 10 later on. I'll stop this momentarily until we get closer to our acceleration. Right, so 20 miles away from Tango Oscar uniform, should be on the safe side, so once this say 168 to 8.4 we should be able to accelerate. I'll set this to flight level 600. And I think I will wait a bit longer. Let's do some fuel transferring now. What the hell, let's accelerate. I'm going to pitch hold, shift R, pitch up, full dry power, read 1, read twice, and start the clock. We want to keep VMO. Try to anyway. So we're now supersonic. Now turn off the static heaters on these guys. Beats on. Up and away. Okay, I'm back on voice again. We have reached Mach 2. Flight level 505 currently. We're well on our way to Hawaii.
Långt upp i norr så finns en mörkersätt. De tror på Herren utan sans eller rätt. Himmelriket svävar om högt i det blå. Tillsammans på arken de alla väntar på. Inte kom där båt och inte kom där manna. Nej, profetens ord var alls inte sanna. Historier finns många om denna tro. Rykten likt detta nu har börjat gro. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Allt detta som har hänt, ja det låter som ett skämt. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Ja det låter som ett skämt, men det har faktiskt hänt. Skedde på en tisdag den 2 april. Jag trodde att verksamheten inte fanns till. Det var en solig dag och alla var glad. Ett eldprov i Kiruna skulle braka på stad. Den dagen observerades väldiga ting. När sekten samlades runt i en ring. En av de äldste skulle sättas på prov. Man eldade i spisen tills värmen var nog. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Allt detta som har hänt, ja det låter som ett skämt. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Ja det låter som ett skämt, men det har faktiskt hänt. När spisen sen var rödlök satt profeten sig upp på. Hans ord skrek han härjade, vad fan tror vi på? Och anledningen till att provet gick så snett berodde aldrig på att på spisen det var rätt. Profeten skrek, demonerna de finns i köket mitt. Nu skall vi driva ut dem, sen är allting fritt. Huruvida nu profeten försökte igen. Efter exorcismen stod ej i tidningen. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Allt detta som har hänt, ja det låter som ett skämt. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Ja det låter som ett skämt, men det har faktiskt hänt. Verkligheten synes dock vara underbar. Till liknande händelser sker än idag. Långt upp i norr så finns en märkesekt. Ja, de tror på Herren utan sans eller vett. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Allt detta som har hänt, ja det låter som ett skämt. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Ja, det låter som ett skämt, men det har faktiskt hänt. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Allt detta som har hänt, ja det låter som ett skämt. Luktar bränt, det luktar bränt. Ja, det låter som ett skämt, men det har faktiskt hänt. socker och jäst och gör dig mäsk, för den ska hjälpa dig. Ta koppar och kärl och göm dig väl, ta på dig mörka plagg. Elda under den destilleras sen och den njuter av solamyrens dag. pratar bara tomt och pratar strunt och skrattar till. Men man vänjer sig. Man vänjer sig. Och jobbet som man gör, det har man ingenting för. Det är någon annan som drar nytta av det. Ingen aning vem, man bara flyttar sina papper, drar sina spakar, hämtar sina pengar. Det känns dumt och idiotiskt, men man vänjer sig. Man vänjer sig. När man kommer hem på kvällen har man glömt att stänga fönstret. Det är sot och smuts på fönsterkarmen, avgaser i rummet. Man har glömt att köpa mat. Fast inte har man just någon matlust, pressar i sig några mackor. Man vänjer sig. Man får vänja sig. Man tar magnesyl mot huvudvärken, dåsar framför tvn, grannen går på toaletten och det brusar i rören. Man är trött och går och lägger sig. Och grannen grälar med sin fru, trafiken är oändlig, det är omöjligt att sova, men man vänjer sig. Man måste vänja sig. Lakanen snor sig och blir fuktiga av svett, och nattens timmar är som gummiband i väntan på glömskans sömn. Så ringer väckarklockan. Herre jävlar denna pina. Man orkar inte tvätta sig, dricker kallat kaffe från igår. Och ute är det kallt och mörkt och ruggigt och dimma, men man vänjer sig. Man vänjer sig. Så blir det fredag i alla fall. Man super lite håglöst och på lördagen går man ut i parken, unnar sig en pizza och på kvällen kommer gråten. Det är skönt att våga bli förtvivlad, känna sig verklig. Man köper lite porr i en tidningsautomat och går hem och onanerar. Det är outsägligt torrt, men man vänjer sig. Man får lov att vänja sig. cars without blame right. Start off gently and try, but I end up in a fight. Now it ain't no use in placing a bet. A bet can't be placed on a woman I can't get. Now black cats keep crossing the streets where I go. If I get hit by lightning, I don't want you alla möjliga flickor till sängs.
Flaps Extended.
So we're in Manchester at the Runway Visitor Centre, and if you've never been, it's great for plane spotters and lovers of any kind of aviation. But if you love the Concorde, well, you're in for a treat. You have to come to this place. I'm stood inside now. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But stood inside in a hangar, looking at an amazing aircraft with one of the guys who looks after it and takes people round. One of the guides, Ross Williamson. Morning.
Good morning, Elliot.
This Concorde, as I said, is indoors. There's a hangar's been specially constructed for the old girl.
It has. When it arrived back in 2003, they did the decommissioning work, and it sat on the same tarmac it's on today for 5 years. And the plan was always to hangar it. And back in 2009, the hangar was completed, and it's fabulous.
This is great.
It is.
Especially for you in the winter.
Absolutely, it's dry, keeps the wind off, keeps the ice away, and it's where it should be.
It's looking fantastic as well. It's probably the cleanest one I've ever seen.
It's taken a bit of work. Being outside for 5 years, of course, you get the sun and the wind and the rain. Getting all the bird lime off is a challenge. But now it's indoors, just going through a programme of cleaning, polishing, and just general maintaining it.
And how popular is the Concorde? Would you say that this is the aircraft everyone comes to see here?
Absolutely. If you ask anybody about any particular type of aeroplane, what do they know? They'll know the Concorde. It's got to be the most famous aeroplane in the world.
And I've said this before because I've seen the one in Brooklyn. Smaller than I was expecting.
Yeah, it is quite a challenge. Supersonic flight does lead to small aeroplanes by normal standards, and it's a perspective thing. A lot of people come and say, oh, it's massive. Well, in a hangar it is massive. If you put it next to a 747, it's not so big. So it is a perspective thing. A lot of people go on board, sit in the seats, and they say it's really small, it's compact. But again, it's picture in your mind. You've got an idea what you think it's going to look like, and it's measured against that, I think.
But it's a great setup because you can wander right underneath it, can't you? You can get right up to the wheels and see into the engine cowlings, and it's a really really well presented aircraft.
It is. It's good. The hangar itself is just a little bit, couple of metres either way bigger than Concorde itself, but it doesn't look crammed in. The space underneath is great. It's a completely open space, and we do all sorts in here. There's corporate events, weddings, we had product launches. You can get all sorts in the hangar. It's absolutely fantastic. We're
about to go up the stairs now. I noticed you're expecting me because you've put the red bunting out. Is this for me? Is it, Ross?
We always like to give visitors a special welcome. But, yeah, we're actually set for a wedding. We do weddings on the aeroplane, and of course you can just have the ceremony on board, or you can have the ceremony, then go underneath and have your reception. So it's a very flexible venue.
Now you do various types of tours, don't you? You do just a general public tour, and obviously we're aviators at Flaps Podcast, so can we have the technical tour, please?
Oh, you can. It's our favourite tour. When we started, we just had the one tour that lasted around about 25-30 minutes, and it was a quick look round, and we quickly realised that there were people interested in aviation that wanted more. So we put the technical tour on, and it's just been a storming success ever since. But we do go into more depth as well with a 3-aircraft tour. So you can do Concorde, Harmonic, nose section of the DC-10. We do the RJX. Sometimes we do the Trident as well. But always Concorde. And we also do a Champagne VIP tour.
We'll have a bit of that. Fantastic. Yeah,
2 hours worth of 2 hours worth of Concorde and champagne.
We'll do all the aircraft and some champagne. We're in aircraft geek heaven, I think, here at Manchester Airport. Right, let's go aboard. Okay. So we're just going into Concorde. Now, what's the registration of this one? This is wasn't this a flagship one?
It was. This is Golf Bravo Oscar Alpha Charlie. Construction number is 204. This was the first production aircraft off the Bristol line. It wasn't the first Concorde to be delivered to British Airways. That was Alpha Alpha. What this one did was spend its first year basically flying between London, the Middle Far East, and London and the States, part of the endurance and testing programme. So it was actually delivered in February 1976.
And we've just walked in, and it is very small. It isn't very small, is it? But it's not big by sort of people get on holiday jets. You expect a bigger cabin than this. It's only 2 seats aside, isn't it? How many seats are there in total?
There are 100. What you've got are 2 cabins. So the back cabin is the same as the front. It's a 1-class aeroplane, but there are 60 seats in the back, 40 seats in the front, and every seat is exactly the same. So it's a good 37-inch seat pitch, which is nice. It's a compromise, which I think sums up pretty much everything about Concorde itself. But you look through, it's nice comfy leather seats. You've got a little bit of room, If you compare this with modern aircraft, if you're going from London to the States today, if you fly business class or first class, you're going to get a big seat that will go into a flat bed. You might get your own personal space. But of course you need it, because the flight time of the Concorde, just half the time of a standard.
Exactly. You certainly got a bit of leg room, haven't you? There's a fair bit of leg room.
Yeah, it's nice. We just tried the seats. They are lovely seats.
It's still got that kind of new car smell. Have you had the seats redone?
What we did with these were installed in 2001 after the Paris crash. The big challenge then, of course, they did modifications to the aeroplane to make it safe. What they basically did was install tank liners inside all the exposed fuel tanks, so around the front and side of the engines. That added weight. So to offset the weight, they installed these seats. Carbon fibre and titanium frame, lovely connelly leather finish, designed by Sir Terence Conran. And they cost British Airways £7,000 a piece.
A seat?
Per seat. It's
Blimey.
not per pair, that's per seat. So you're looking at £700,000 per aircraft for seats.
Just for the seats?
Yeah.
You can see why the tickets were a bit pricey, can't you?
You can. The big thing with Concorde, of course, was that it was fabulous if you're a business person. You've got London and New York, two major business centres. So if you're going to the States, do it in style, save yourself some time.
Absolutely. Right, let's have a wander down.
Okay.
Lead the way. It's very posh. Very, very posh. We're just walking past the toilets now, and they're no different really to a normal aircraft, are they?
No, they're small. If you look around the aeroplane in general, after the Paris crash, there were plans to do a refurb, because you've got these lovely leather seats, a nice blue, matches the carpet, but the rest of the cabin the colours don't quite go together. So the plan was to redo the cabin, change the washrooms, and redo the lounges. So looking at around about £14 million extra investment just to give it a new breath of life and bring it back into use in the 21st century.
I was expecting at least gold taps.
Well,
or soft toilet paper. What's the toilet paper like? Oh, it's just normal stuff, Ross.
Well, some things you've got to have. The big challenge, of course, is weight. You can have lovely, fabulous,
of course,
marble and top-notch washrooms, but you carry less passengers.
Yeah.
So it's quite a challenge. The new washrooms, the design was nice. It's very minimalist. A single tap in that new washroom was going to cost them £1,000. And you look at the size of the tap, so that's just ridiculous.
And obviously, of course, this is a sort of technical tour we're doing, but equally we like a bit of showbiz. Who's been on this aircraft?
Everybody. Again, we've had a few of the cabin crew come along and we'll tell you all sorts of stories about the Queen, where the Queen sat.
Has the Queen been on this one?
The Queen has flown on a couple of Concordes.
Wow.
So it's one of the...
Which seat?
1A.
Of course, Mum, of course.
The nice thing they did, they wouldn't typically leave it as a standard layout. So the 40 seats in there, most of those would come out. They'd leave at least the front row in, because they're still going to fasten the seatbelts, of course. The rest would become a stateroom. So it was the crew will tell you it was a nice thing to do, quite demanding, but it's one of those things you can say, I've been on the Concorde with the Queen. It's fabulous. Lots of other famous people. You've got every politician from the mid-1970s onwards. British politician has been on board. Every US president as well. So, and celebrities. If you've got a celebrity, they've been on board Concorde. So every seat is a famous seat. So you see the rear cabin here. On our aeroplane, we protect that with a sheet of glass because that's where we do the weddings. So it's as it was on its last flight back in 2003. And we take the front row of seats out. The idea of that is you've got some space for your registrars and your bride and groom.
So if you really love the Concorde, you can actually get, and the service takes place here actually on the aircraft. If you're a fan and you want to get married, you can get married in this plane.
Absolutely. Yeah, what people do, you can have up to 50, technically you can have up to 54 guests. There are 56 seats, but you need one for the bride and one for the groom. So people come in, the guests take the seats, the bride and groom board to music, whatever they want to board to. The registrar will do the ceremony. It takes about 10 or 15 minutes. You're then a husband and wife. Then you can go off underneath the aeroplane. You can have your reception down there. So it's very popular.
You never had any grooms want to use the emergency exits, have you?
Not yet.
Do you tell them where they're situated? Here and here.
We do a few visits first, so we give them a bit of a laugh and introduce a bit of humour in the early stages of the planning. But it's nice. It's popular. It's one of those things. If you are an aviation fan, then it's what you want to do. Typically, airline people are the ones that will do it.
Where to next?
Flight deck, I think.
Oh, flight deck. Going to the flight deck now. the business end. Okay, I think it's fair to say I am in aircraft geek heaven now, and I'm in the captain's chair. Oh, Ross, I love you. Thank you very much.
Another great thing about our Concorde is you can do this. We're sat on the flight deck of Alpha Charlie, and you can't do this in any other Concorde anywhere in the world. It's a unique opportunity.
It's incredibly complicated, you know, and manual dials, isn't it? There's no computers on board. Well, I mean, there are computers, but not computers as you'd understand them now, and there's no glass cockpit or, you know, screens. No,
that's right. We had an Emirates 777 pilot just a couple of days ago. He came in on a standard tour, did the tour, got him on the flight deck, and I couldn't get him off. He's basically sat here looking at all the dials, photographing each individual instrument. If you're, I'd say a recent recruiter flying, you will be used to the glass cockpit, you know, the multifunction displays. To see all these analog dials, and there are hundreds of them, is a bit of a treat.
Well, I mean, I can fly a Cessna, and actually it's got the 6-pack of normal instruments. You look at that, and you know the thing I learned to fly was probably about 40 years old, and it's the same kind of. Okay, there's a lot more of them, but it's a similar lot of instruments.
Well, exactly. You always need to know the basic information, don't you?
Yeah.
Your speed, your height, direction. But it's crammed in because it's quite a confined space, so it does look very busy. But it's the same skill. You scan the instruments, you're looking for the same things.
So I could fly this then?
In theory.
Should we have a go? So, I mean, is there anything here that is non-standard? I mean, obviously there's the dials for, you know, the airspeed. I mean, my Cessna never went to Mach 2, I'll be honest.
Oh, it's probably a bit faster than your Cessna. Some of the instruments are a little bit different. You've got strip instruments instead of the standard dials, just to save a bit of space. You'd have TCAS, of course. What you won't see on most other aeroplanes is, well, this particular instrument here. It's an instrument to show you where the centre of gravity of the aeroplane is. And the big challenge with Concorde is you accelerate, you get 2 points, the centre of balance and centre of lift, actually begin to move apart. It happens with most aircraft, but by a small amount. Or with Concorde, if you did nothing, you'd have a 6-foot difference. So the nose would actually pitch quite steeply down. What you've got to do with the centre of gravity is keep that centre of gravity moving back in line with the centre of lift. And to do that, you're transferring fuel from the front and wingtip tanks to the back tank. And the centre of gravity indicator, you can see the needle, well, obviously it's doing nothing at the moment, is just above 52. Well, that's 52% of the length of the wing. Typically starts around about 53.4, ends up at 59% off the length of the wing. So you're moving that centre of gravity by about 6 feet. And to do that, you're shifting roughly 10 tonnes of fuel from the front of the aeroplane to the back. And we've actually got a massive flight engineers panel on Concorde. It's got to be the most complex flight engineers panel you'll ever see. And the whole centre section, literally, it's a good, I'd say, best part of 30% of the panel.
I mean, it's literally floor to ceiling, isn't it?
It is. The panel is massive, but the 30% of that panel is around about 30% for dedicated for managing that fuel. And it can transfer fuel between any of those tanks. And there's all sorts on this panel. You've got obviously engine and engine-related controls. You can manually control the intakes and the exhaust systems if you need to. Got hydraulic systems, electrical systems, aircon systems. It's fairly standard, but just that bit more complicated.
There are 4 seats actually in here. There's the captain, the first officer, the flight engineer, and there's a spare one as well. Who's sat there?
Well, there is. That's the supernumerary, the jump seat. There used to actually be 5. An extra seat was just in the tunnel as we came down. It's a fold-up seat. And the 2 seats on training flights would be occupied by training captains. So you could have 5 people in the flight deck, which is a bit of a squeeze.
But as you look out over the cockpit, you can see through the very famous nose. And where are the switches to work that then? Do you know where they are?
Yep, you've got
in amongst all these?
Literally on the front console, about, just to the right of the centre, there's a little lever, a visor nose lever. It's a 3-position lever. And you can actually move it to the first position. That would send the visor, so the outside window with the bars, sliding away down inside the nose. Second position would drop the nose by 5 degrees, and that's the position used when you're taxiing out for takeoff. Once you're in the air, around about 300 miles an hour, you bring the lever back up to the top. That then streamlines the aircraft for its flight right the way through the supersonic phase. At the far end, once you've decelerated, again around about 300 miles an hour, same process. You drop the lever down 2 notches, simply because as you slow the aircraft down, the angle of attack increases. On your final approach, typically 4-5 miles away, you're down to 190 miles an hour. You then select the bottom position. That drops the nose by 12.5 degrees, and that gives you the line of sight to see the runway. So it's all about forward vision and streamlining. One of the many challenges of Concorde was the transonic phase. So imagine you go from 600 to 1100 miles an hour. Use the afterburners, of course. It's strange to see a commercial aircraft with afterburners, but you've got 4 simple white switches at the bottom of the throttle quadrant. Those will engage the afterburners to take you to your takeoff speed, 250 miles an hour on the ground, and to go from 600 to 1100 miles an hour in the air. And that's just incredible. You bring them in pairs. As each pair kicks in, little nudge in the small of your back's all you feel as the power bites, and then within a minute you're through the speed of sound, and there's nothing for the passengers.
Yeah, because I've heard that people who flew on it, they're expecting something, but you don't notice anything at all. You're going at twice the speed of sound and just, having your champagne.
Absolutely. If they didn't tell you when they put the afterburners in, you might think it's a little bit of turbulence. And then within a minute, there's nothing. There is no sensation at all as you break the sound barrier. On the flight deck, what you would see are some pressure-sensitive instruments. So the rate of climb and descent indicators are classic. As the pressure wave moves back along the aeroplane across the sensors, that would bob up and down just for a second or two. Then it settles. And that's all you saw. So it's just a non-event.
I heard as well, we interviewed some guys who flew this, a couple of ex-Concorde captains. They said one of the problems with flying the aircraft and being in the cabin is because it expanded so much because of the heat during the flight. You have to be careful where you put things. If you put something into a crevice, you might not be able to get it back when you landed.
Absolutely. The actual point you could see the expansion was on the engineer's panel. At the extreme right of it, there's a blue label that says cabin secured takeoff. Now, as we stand on the ground today, the 2 panels actually meet. There is no gap between those panels. But once you're in the air, as you accelerate through the speed of sound, you get kinetic heating take place. So the air friction begins to build up, the aircraft gets hot. Sort of temperatures you're talking about on the tip of the nose up to 127 degrees Celsius. Passing the flight deck windows, 100 degrees, so the boiling point of water.
Yeah.
That, of course, is going to cause the aircraft to grow. And I've got a photo here that shows a flight engineer, and you can see he's got his fingers right the way up to the knuckles inside the gap.
Yeah, it's he literally is right up to the knuckles. I'll just go and let's look at the gap now that you're talking about, and I can confirm there is literally, you can't even get your finger in there at the moment, and he's got his whole hand in there. So that's about 2 or 3 inches of expansion.
It's around about 1 inch. If you look at the second photo I have here, it shows an engineer's hat. I think it's been very carefully placed inside the gap. This was done on the very last flight of Concorde, and a couple of engineers did it. So you can see a couple of Concordes around the world with the caps in place. And it's the way of saying goodbye. The final flights, because you don't have flight engineers anymore, of course. So they signed the hats, stuck them in the gaps, left them there, and the gap closed up.
And that's never coming out again.
No, that's it, it's stuck. But you mentioned being careful where you put things. There's been a few instances over the years where the engineers have been busy, gone through a checklist, know where to put the checklist. So you stick it in the gap, thinking I'll take that away in a moment. You get carried away, doing something else, you've decelerated. That's it till the next time. So it's, you've got to be very careful what you do.
I mean, this is what 1960s, 1950s technology, isn't it? To be honest, this aircraft. But I mean, there are computers on board, but they're whacking great big things, aren't they? I mean, really quite big boxes full of processing power.
Oh, there are. As I said, dozens of boxes. If you take the panels away, what you get are boxes that are around about 22 inches long, about 3 inches wide, and about 5 inches high. If you take the tops off, they're crammed with circuit boards. And if you feed inputs in, runs it through the circuits, you get your outputs out. And there's different computers, processors for different functions. So it's by today's standards a very basic aeroplane, but you've got to match what aeroplanes do today with what Concorde did. It may be basic, but you can't actually do what Concorde did today.
That is very true. I mean, do you think we ever will see the like? I mean, is there a will to go at supersonic speeds carrying passengers?
There is, but there's a lot of challenges. And that word keeps coming up with Concorde. If you think about the range, just over 4,000 miles, it's not really enough. If you're going to cross the Pacific, you need a bigger range than that. Payload 100 passengers. In terms of weight, 28,000 pounds weight. That's with a maximum takeoff weight of 408,000 pounds. So it's quite a fine balance. Noise, it was noisy, and it was also a bit thirsty. Well, actually, it was very thirsty. So if you can get around those various challenges, then you're in with a fighting chance of building a supersonic airliner again. The trend now is looking more towards size. The A380 is a prime example. But if you do want to go supersonic, you're looking at business jets.
There's one in production, isn't there? I've read that somewhere. Someone's making in America. They're making a supersonic biz jet.
Yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 that are actually on the drawing board on different stages of that. And the beauty of those is, of course, you don't have to fly from London, which Concorde did, to New York. You can go from Manchester to Toronto. You can go pretty much any smaller airport to any smaller airport. Dozen people, so you can have your board meeting on board on the way. Fly about Mach 1.7, so you're going to save time. You avoid some of the complications of going that bit faster. So that's the way things are moving at the moment.
But it's not the same, is it? Where's the romance?
No, this is it. If you talk to the people who flew Concorde, then they'll tell you it was absolutely fabulous. You know, sitting on the flight deck, looking through the windows, just looking at the curvature of the Earth and the really dark blue sky. And just imagine looking through the windows and seeing 250,000 square miles just laid ahead of you. And watching the weather systems, big spirals of cloud heading towards the UK as you cross the Atlantic.
Yeah, as far as office windows goes, this isn't a bad one, is it?
It's got to be amongst the best in the world, I would say.
So we've moved outside now. It was hard to drag ourselves away. I had a little sit in the Queen's seat. Sorry, Mum. I hope that doesn't interfere with the knighthood or anything. Well, actually, you've done the honours list, so I was missed out again. So, I'm not so fussed. We've moved down to the pointy end. Looking up at that is a beautiful sight.
It is. It's one of the things we stress is the shape. It's a unique shape. It's going to be a very long, thin nose because that allows you to break that pressure cone of air that builds up on the tip of the nose as you go through the speed of sound. But you can see from here, it gives you the big challenge because we're standing under now the nose of Concorde that's 24 feet long. So imagine you're sat on the flight deck looking out through the window, there's 24 feet of nose ahead of you. And you can see quite clearly the curved line on the side, and there's a line that runs underneath across the aircraft. That's the hinge. And it's always amazing for people to see just how long that nose was. That's, again, an interesting perspective from here.
Well, and stood down here as well, the visibility is an issue, isn't it? Because you can barely see the cockpit windows, can you? There's very little visibility at all. Exactly.
There's really 2 phases. You've got to be able to see when you're taxiing, and you also need to see, of course, when you're coming into land. Because as you slow down, the way the delta wings generate lift, the angle of attack increases. So you're looking at typically an angle of 12 degrees on the final approach. So dropping that nose 12.5 degrees gives you a nice clear view of your runway.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? When you stand right at which you can do, of course, here, you can stand right at the tip of the nose, underneath the aircraft, and just look down, and that's a hell of a view, isn't it? That the delta wing, and just the shape, that iconic shape, and looking into those engine cowlings. It's the beast. It's a magnificent view.
It is. It's on the tours we always bring people to this point and just say to them, just look back and appreciate the shape. Because you're right, from here you can see the whole of Concorde. And it's incredible. I see it every day, but standing here now, it's the same feeling as it was 7 years ago.
That is making me go a bit goosebumpy.
It's brilliant.
Hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. I really mean that. Why is that plane still not flying? It's so wrong.
Yeah, it does. It looks like it could have come out of the factory yesterday.
I know.
It's not aged at all. At this point, you can actually really appreciate the shape of the wings. Now, that double delta, the ogival delta, is quite an amazing shape. And if you get on the wings itself, you can see there isn't a straight bit on it anywhere. It cambers, but it cambers not just from the fuselage, but from the front to the back edge. It's twisted underneath, it's sculpted, there's not a flat bit on it anywhere. And the sweep of the wings, it's a lovely, almost a continuous curve, but there's a notch part way down there's technical reasons for having that, and if you come on the tour, we'll tell you what it is.
Oh, see what you did there. Very good. I like that. And this man knows, because you get to go on the wings, don't you, and dust it.
I do. Part of what I've been doing is to make sure the aircraft looks good. So a bit of dusting, bit of polishing, just giving it a shine, because it looks best when it shines.
It's not a bad day at the office, is it?
No, it's tricky.
Are those the pitos underneath there?
Yeah, we've got a pitot on the nose, and one either side of the nose itself. There's 3 in total. And then you've got a couple of incidence vanes, and a couple of temperature sensors, and then behind those you've got a couple of icing detectors, because with a wing this size, ice could be a big problem at your normal height, normal speed. Yeah. And you can see from here the black mats underneath the leading edge of the wings, those are the electrically heated de-icing mats, so no bleed air, just pure electrical heating. You can also see from here that the nose wheel is a long way back, so from where the pilot sat, you're looking at around about 38 feet between this point and where those forward wheels are. And it's the first place we could actually get them in, because you've got the 24-foot long nose, you've got an undercarriage that's the best part of 13 feet that of course retracts forwards, and underneath the floor between those 2 points you've got to get all the avionics in, and the avionics bay is quite small, so it's challenging. Just imagine trying to taxi an aircraft that you sat 38 feet ahead of the nose wheel as you're moving down the taxiway, and imagine being over the grass as you take the bends. It's an interesting experience.
It'd be like trying to watch my missus park her car. There's a couple of gaps in the underside of the aircraft, and we can see. And what are we looking at in there?
We've actually got 3 of the hatches off. You can see the relay jacks through the front hatch, some of the avionics through the other 2 hatches. It does give you an idea how difficult the aircraft was to work on.
Those boxes there, I mean, we were talking about this on the flight deck. There's 3 fairly big boxes. They look like the size of small suitcases. I'm guessing that's kind of that's a computer.
It is, yeah. If you drag those out, they weigh around about 20 kilos each, so there's a fair bit of weight in those, and accessing them is quite a challenge. Everything is at least 12, 13 feet above the ground, so obviously you need ladders. Once you're in there, space is very tight.
And the computing power of probably a calculator now.
Yep, if you've got a mobile phone on you, which most people have, there's a lot more processing power in a mobile phone than on the computers of Concorde.
Yeah, but your mobile phone can't get to 60,000 feet and fly at twice the speed of sound, can it, Ross?
No, that's very true.
So we stopped just by the nose wheel now. Well, I say nose wheel, it's nowhere near the nose, is it?
No, it's quite far back. It's actually under, I think it's under row 5 in the cabin, so it is quite far back. And it's a big undercarriage. If you're used to walking around aeroplanes, typically 3 or 4 feet clearance from the ground is what you get. Well, with Concorde, as I say, it's about 12, 13 feet. So the long undercarriage would retract forwards. You can actually see a couple of doors, very long doors, with lights on the underneath. And imagine the doors opening to the sides. Well, the lights are actually pointing to the sides, but there's a clever mechanism that actually rotates those lights forwards to give you literally forward light. Those are your landing lights. There's another 2 actually just on the very root of the wing, and again those are powered by little motors down, so the light projects forward. It preserves the aerodynamics when it's in the air at higher speed, but it gives you that projected light when you need it.
And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Everything. It's a very smooth aircraft, isn't it? As you said, even something like a light is sort of recessed, and it's all about keeping that aerodynamic shape, isn't it?
It is. It's, as mentioned before, it's a compromise. Everything is, well, not the best you could possibly have, but it's the best you could possibly make work.
Yeah.
Because of course, you put the best of one thing in, you've compromised something else. So it's a balance, but it's a very flat aeroplane underneath. Again, most aeroplanes, when you stand underneath, you've got your fuselage, so an oval fuselage, the wings coming off perhaps halfway down. This is literally flat underneath. It's standing at its perspective, you can really appreciate that flatness. It's all about, again, riding the air in the right way.
And this nose wheel, just tell us, what speed did it land at? What was the final approach speed? What speed was that hitting the deck at?
Touchdown's 187 miles an hour.
Pretty quick.
It is.
Hence why all the wear on the wheels. It's down to the cords. I'd never pass an MOT.
Well, apparently these are in pretty good condition. The engineers will tell you that they actually build these tyres with sacrificial wear strips in them. And the idea is you can see how the tyres are wearing. Looking at these now, looks like a bit of string that's been basically just stuck on the outside of the tyre. But it's just showing that the tyres are wearing quite well. You don't have those on the main wheels. They're smooth and a fair bit bigger. And the big challenge with those, of course, is at 187 touchdown speed, you're going to get instant vaporisation of the outside skin of the tyre. So it was quite heavy on tyres, depending on how the pilots landed it, of course.
But remember, any landing you can walk away from is a good one.
Yeah, I believe so.
Anyone you can use the aircraft again is a brilliant landing.
Better. Yeah, the challenge is with tyres, you're looking at around about £20,000 for a set of tyres. In different phases of its life, early on you could retread some of the tyres, and towards the end you couldn't. So once the tyres were damaged, I mean, you land on a stone, a chunk gets taken out, those tyres had to be taken away and got rid of.
I suppose as well, the other thing with this aircraft, and we keep saying about it should still be flying. I mean, the problem is, of course, I mean, how would you? I mean, parts aren't made for these planes, I guess, anymore. Where would you get parts from?
Yeah, that's something else. When they retired the aircraft, they had a lot of auctions for charity, And what they're auctioning off were spare parts. Now, some bizarre parts, engine parts, bits of everything. But of course, those bits of everything are what you need to keep your aircraft airworthy. So you're quite right. The Concordes, they only built 20 in total. Only 14 of those carried passengers. It's a very small number, and they were pretty much hand-built. So each Concorde is subtly different. Spare supply is hard to come by. So in the future, if somebody wanted to get one flying again, that would be, that word again, a big challenge.
Where to next, boss?
Well, as we're passing the forward luggage bay, it becomes fairly obvious that there's not a great deal of space for storing anything, baggage, freight.
So hang on, look, that's the luggage hold. That's the entrance where they put all the bags in.
It's one of them, yeah. We're actually
It's
standing-
tiny.
It is. The aperture's about 3 feet square.
I thought that was another inspection hatch.
It looks like one. We can actually see that the door hinges inwards. Now, once you're in that luggage bay, you've got roughly 8 feet forwards and 6 feet back. The depth is around about 3 feet, and the width is around about 4 feet. There's a second one at the back. The total capacity is around about 2.5 tons, which is nothing.
And were the bags loaded in one by one? Because now, of course, they're all put into the containers, aren't they, and just wheeled in. But I'm guessing with that hatch, you're not going to get a container in there, are you?
No, the only way to load them is hand load them using a conveyor belt to get them up inside the luggage bay, and a baggage handler would be in their position in the bags. And again, you've got to be really careful with the balance. Typically, you've got to get the 53.4% of your wing root as your centre of gravity position for your takeoff. And to do that, you're moving bags around. I think the dispatcher had a big job with Concorde. It had to be spot on. Near enough just wasn't good enough. It had to be 100%.
And of course, with some of the passengers who go on there, you wouldn't want the baggage handlers, not that they would have done here at Manchester, of course, lobbing the bags around, because when they're the Queens.
Absolutely not. Some valuable stuff in those bags, not to mention the cost of the bags themselves.
Yes, very true.
So we're looking underneath the wings now, and as we're looking underneath, just need to imagine that inside the wings are fuel tanks. You've got 5 in each of the wings, 2 across the forward section of the wings, and final one right at the back under the tail. Total capacity 119,500 litres of fuel, which is enough to go from London to New York with that all-important reserve, just in case you have to divert off anywhere. And we can see 2 refuelling points actually towards the centre of the aircraft, so we could pump the fuel in from either or both of these points. And there's a refuelling panel. And again, we have this open so we can show people that it was quite a task to load up the fuel. And we're looking at a panel that is around about 2.5 feet long, with 13 dials and control switches on.
That's almost as complicated as the cockpit, and that's just for
It
putting the
is.
fuel in.
That's just for getting the fuel on board, yeah. So once you've connected your fuel pipes to the underground supply or Bowsers, whichever way you're doing it, the refuelling engineer would then pump the fuel into the various tanks by selecting the switches and directing the fuel into those tanks. And just behind the panel is a small disc. It's around about 2 inches diameter. And looking closer at that, you can see there's a matrix etched on the disc, and there's a bubble. In essence, it's a spirit level. And what the engineer would do is just have a quick check on that to see if the bubble is in the middle, because that will tell you if the aircraft's properly balanced. If it's not, you then have to move the fuel around in the tanks, get it ready for takeoff.
For a supersonic aircraft, some bits of it aren't very high tech, are they, Ross?
You know, sometimes
A bubble.
just a bubble in a bit of glass with a bit of water in is all you need.
But if it works, it
works.
doesn't matter, does it?
Absolutely. And what we can also see here are the access hatches for getting inside the wings. And we're looking at oval panels. So there's several of them underneath it. And that is the way you get inside the fuel tanks in the wings if you needed to do any inspections or any work. So post the Paris crash, they had to install tank liners to make the aircraft safe. Basically the Kevlar and rubber compound. And they would sit just ahead of the engines, so just ahead of the intakes and inboard of the engines themselves. The only way to get those in was to drain the fuel, get rid of the vapours, which took the best part of a week, then to remove these hatches, which are no more than, I'd say, 10 inches wide by about
You'd struggle to get
15
your head
inches
in,
wide.
wouldn't you?
You would, but the challenge was to get the whole body of the engineers who were doing the work through the hatch and then moving forwards to work in the prone area, because you've got to get these tank liners fairly well. They all ranged in different sizes and shapes to say every Concorde was different, but the average one would be about 2 feet wide by about 2.5 feet long. So you've got to take those physically inside the wing, position them, clip them together, and once all 100 are in, come back out, put the panels on, put your fuel in. So it's a devil of a job. You needed quite short, not very well built engineers to do that work. So we're just carrying on underneath the aeroplane. We've got a few other hatches open so you can see the air conditioning intake, the hydraulic servicing hatches. And what's nice about the way British Airways retired their Concordes, around the side of the engine you've got a couple of stickers. And one of them will tell you that the engines were made by Rolls-Royce, who work with a company called Snecma. You may know Snecma, French aerospace company, still around today. They worked on the quite complex assembly because it's a three-stage engine basically. Got the fuel burning bit in the middle, complex intake at the front, and a complex exhaust system on the back. British Aircraft Corporation built the complex intake, Rolls-Royce the engines, Snecma worked on the exhaust system. And all three have to work together because there's no point putting more air in the front than you can get through the engine that will go out the exhaust, because it builds up, then it comes back forward as a surge. So a fabulous bit of engineering in its own right. The air intake will slow the air down, that's its job. So you're looking at top speed, the air going in the intake at 1,350 miles an hour. You've got to slow that air down to subsonic speed. The box containing the intakes is 11 feet long. So in that 11 feet, you slow the air down by 1,000 miles an hour. It goes in the engine doing 350 miles an hour. You've warmed it and you've pre-compressed it. The engine then does the clever burning bit. It goes through the exhaust section, that's where the afterburner sits, just as the exhaust enters the main exhaust chamber. They reckon that besides slowing air down, the air intake contributed to the thrust of the aircraft. So imagine on takeoff, the fuel burning bit will give you 82% of the thrust coming out the back. The other 18% is a combination of the intake and the exhaust. At Mach 2, the fuel burning bit will give you 8%.
8%?
8%. 63% will come from the air intake, the remainder from the exhaust system.
Blimey.
So it's comparatively efficient once you get it up to Mach 2. But so the nice thing they did when they retired the Concordes, they put a second sticker on the side of the engine. Now, all the BA Concordes have them, and it reads, engineered to be the best, Concorde flew above the rest. And there's some names and signatures across the bottom of each of those stickers, and that's a team of engineers who decommissioned that particular Concorde. It's their way of saying goodbye to the best in the world.
And there it is, you can see it on the side of the Olympus engines. And yeah, you can just see the signatures. That's incredible. That's brought a bit of a lump to my throat.
Yeah, it's a nice little touch.
Yeah.
Fabulous. So we're carrying on again underneath the wings now, and we're just passing underneath the PFCUs on the powered flight control units. And what you have are two large bumps underneath each of the wings. If you could take the cowling off those, you'd find hydraulic rams. So up on the flight deck, you're moving the control column. It's a fly-by-wire aircraft. In fact, it was the world's first fly-by-wire airliner. So as you're moving the control column, the computer's analysing what you're doing, sending signals to these PFCUs. And those will then move the elevons on the backs of the wings. And these are the only moving parts on the entire wing. And
so there's no flaps or slots or anything like that?
Absolutely nothing. It's in that way a very simple wing. Once you've got round the shape, very complex shape, very simple controls. There are 3 elevons on either side, and each elevon is actually a 2-panel elevon. So technically there are 12, but each moves as a pair. And we're looking at quite large panels, around about 6 feet by, 5 feet I suppose, per panel. So if you have 2 of those together, 6 feet by 10 feet. And it gives you that elevator air-along combination. And it's a very active system.
Was it stable to fly at low speeds? Did the pilot said that?
It was. The control system was incredible. You've got to think back to the 1960s. It's always hard to imagine 1960s doing this sort of stuff. But they produced an aeroplane that was incredibly stable. It could do all sorts of things that other aircraft, even today, couldn't do. And the pilots again tell you nice stories about them coming into a very windy American city, possibly Chicago, because that's renowned for being windy.
Yes.
And they're in the hold, not for very long, but they're watching a couple of 747s ahead of them trying to land, and the crosswind was just far too much for the 747, so they gave it a try, turned off, diverted, and you got the okay for the final approach. They switched the auto land system on, and the air traffic controllers just were a bit puzzled. They just wanted to confirm that we're definitely doing an auto land, because it's not what you would normally do in a strong crosswind. And the pilots said, yep, we're all on auto, it's just going to do it itself. So they sat back, left it alone, and it was a perfect touchdown. Crosswinds, it was designed, it coped with crosswinds incredibly. It's a fabulous bit of engineering.
It is. I mean, when you say that, you know, the range of speeds and things it had to do, it's flying at Mach 2, and yet, you know, and yet it's still quite good at very, very low speeds. You know, what an amazing all-round aircraft.
Oh yeah, the low speed stuff was again quite challenging because you mentioned the angle increase, the altitude increases as you slow down.
1,000 to go.
That's quite challenging with drag. So what you tend to be doing is increasing the power as you're slowing down to balance. Well, there'll come a point where if you get the angle too steep, the drag only becomes less available. So at that point, you're in real trouble.
Yeah.
But, it's quite steep. You could take it up to 25 degrees nose of attitude, and it would still be airable. So let's move around the backs of the engines. There's an unpainted exhaust section because it's pretty hot, so you're wasting your time painting that. And on the backs of those engines, you then got these secondary nozzles. There's actually two sets of nozzles, as the name secondary implies. The primary one sitting inside, the secondary is on the outside. And it's a convergent divergent system. You can actually squeeze, control the air inside the engine itself, which allows you to control the speed of the rotation. Well, the actual buckets you can see on the back, the secondary nozzles, 3 positions. They're set now for takeoff, and you can actually see a couple of gaps across the top and the bottom, and that allows cold air to mix with the hot exhaust. In theory, that should quieten things down a little bit for takeoff, but if you ever heard Concorde takeoff, you know,
They do a very good job, yeah.
When you're supersonic, these diverge, they open up further, and when you land, you close these completely at the back, which leaves them completely open at the front. That then becomes your reverse thrust. And because there's no moving parts, no way of slowing the aircraft down other than throttle back, increase the angle of attack, you can engage a couple of those secondary nozzles as reverse thrusts in the air for emergency deceleration. And the registration, GBOAC, you've got a large fuel tank into which you pump the fuel to trim the aircraft. And a lovely view of the tail wheel. So not many airplanes in the world have 4 sets of wheels, 4 undercarriages. Of course Concorde did. And the whole aim of that, if you're coming into land or taking off, you over-rotate. Well, you're not going to catch not the back of the aeroplane, it's more the backs of those secondary nozzles. You've got to protect those. So you catch the wheels before you hit the nozzles.
I suppose it's like a set of stabilisers, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I suppose it is. The big challenge was that once you've caught those, there is no escape because it sounds an alarm on the flight deck and the aircraft has to be checked once you get back to base.
And you'd be in a bit of trouble, no?
You would.
And ribbing from the other pilots.
Well, you would. But you ask the pilots to never use those wheels. If you ask the engineers, you'll get a slightly different story.
Of course. Everything about Concorde really is it's all kind of big numbers, isn't it? Or firsts, or the best of this or the best of that. It's I mean, as you said, it is a compromise, but equally things aren't compromised, are they? The materials certainly aren't. The build quality.
No, that's right. The metal it's made from it's not standard aircraft aluminium. It's hydrominium, and there's about 2.5% copper, but there's a bit of magnesium, and it copes with the creep. Because if you go through the speed of sound, you get the heat building up. You've got hot metal, a lot of stress. And of course when you slow down it contracts. So over a short period of time, normal aircraft aluminium, it's going to crack. But the hydrominium resists that.
Altitude alert,
So there is
1,000
that.
to go.
You've got to paint it. Imagine you've got
It's
an
got a
aircraft.
different type of paint, doesn't it?
It has. It's a flexible paint basically. So imagine you've got an aircraft that's going to grow 8 inches every time it flies. So your paint has got to cope with that contraction expansion. So it's a special paint. It's about 2.5 times as thick. And it would grow with the aircraft, contract back, and reflect off a fair bit of the heat you got when you went supersonic. If you look along the leading edge, there's a series of panels. It's not one continuous piece of metal. The panels are about 4 feet long, and they're fixed on one end. And that's to allow the leading edge to expand, because of course your metal's got to go. You've got to give it that growth capability. So it's just an incredible. Really is an incredible bit of engineering.
It is an incredible bit of engineering. And what, 40, 50 years old technology?
Absolutely.
And we still haven't beat it.
No. Today it will take you between 6.5 and 8.5 hours to go from London to New York. Fastest time Concorde ever did that journey was 2 hours, 52 minutes, 59 seconds.
It's amazing. It's an amazing exhibition as well. If you're anywhere near Manchester Airport, actually even if you're not anywhere near Manchester Airport, come and visit it, because if you love aircraft, and who doesn't love Concorde, let's be honest, You'll have a fantastic time here. Thank you ever so much for showing us around. It's an amazing bit of kit and an amazing job you've got, Ross. I think it's fair to say we're a bit jealous.
It's a tough job, but somebody has to do it.
If you need anyone to come and help you dust the wings, we're here at Flaps.
I'll give you a call.
Thank you ever so much for showing us around Alpha Charlie.
It's a great pleasure.
Flaps Extended.
Alright, I'm back on voice now. We're subsonic and we are getting closer to our destination. We'll sit here at flight level 340 for a couple of more minutes. And then we'll start to descend inbound our destination. Oops. 29095. Well, no way to see so far.
Altitude alert, 1000 to go.
Radio altimeters are active.
Right.
Feet radio. Feet. 500 feet, stable. 400 feet. 300 feet. 200 feet.
100 to go.
100 feet. 50, 40, 30, 20, 50.
Decide.
Oh, I forgot to set the minima. Well.
100 knots. 75 knots. 50. 40. Knots.
Okay, welcome to Hawaii. Ah, what are you crying about, Graham? Ah, you twat. What do you want, Graham?
Nothing. I just want to annoy you. And
You fucking gobshites. What are you boys up to?
How about flying? You know, we're
Oh.
flying.
Knobhead fly a Concorde.
Is he going to fly to JFK? Oh, no, he's not. Well, Leamington Bridge.
I'm going to Jigaboos now to Hawaii. Well, I'm actually going to Kennedy, a bit of a detour around the world.
Oh,
Next.
Join Michael, he's doing a detour around the USA.
Oh, fucking hell.
Oh, well, that'll stop you. It's nice scenery there. Did you get that for you?
Yeah, this is Orbex's latest scenery. Yeah, very good scenery. I paid 65 Australian dollars for this one. It's beautiful.
You should have got it on the discount.
Yeah. I especially love the control tower. They put a lot of details into that one.
Yes, see, it's one of Microsoft's finest.
Yes.
Yes, it's the Mark.
A drone?
The Mark 1.
Took it all in there.
Where's your co-pilot lately? He's not been around, has he?
My better half, the pointy sister number 2.
The pointy sister, yeah. Your pointy sister, where's the pointy sister?
I don't know really.
Oh dear me. He'll get some abuse soon.
Oh yeah.
If he's not careful. Well, you're not paying much attention to what?
Me and pointy sister number 2 are going to the Brooklands Concorde in October.
Oh, I know.
Again?
Oh, yeah, but we're flying the simulator this time.
Right.
I think I'll stop here.
Don't they do Alpha Echo in a repaint of Concorde?
No idea.
I'll tell you I've
No, tell me all about it.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I could imagine, yeah.
I mean, shit. Trying to have one now or save it for Josh's wedding. Go one of the old outside port balloons.
Alright, boys, girls, welcome to Hawaii. I'm gonna have to drink up the rest of my wine and beer and whiskey, but I'm off to bed. Good night, everyone. I might do a flight tomorrow from Hawaii to